Chapter 1, The Portal. In the forest deep and green, a portal appeared, never before seen. Curiosity sparked in young Jack's mind, as he stepped through, leaving the world behind. The portal glowed with magic and light. Jack felt a rush, a sense of flight. He emerged in a world of wonder, filled with creatures, both strange and thunder, a talking rabbit, a wise old owl, a mischievous fairy, a friendly howl. Jack couldn't believe what he had found, a magical world, so full of sound. The portal had led him to a place where magic and wonder filled every space. Jack knew he had to explore it all, and so he ventured forth, ready to fall. Through the portal he had gone, into a world where magic shone, and though he missed his old life too, Jack knew he'd found something new. The portal had opened up a way to a world that begged for him to stay, and so he stayed, with a smile and a nod, happy to be in the land of magic, created by the portal's odd. Chapter 2, The Enchanted Kingdom. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there was an enchanted kingdom, where magic held sway. Jack stumbled upon it, through a mystical portal, and found himself in a place, both wondrous and immortal. The kingdom was full of life, with talking animals and fairies, where the skies were filled with rainbows, and the land was never weary. Jack was amazed at the beauty and magic he saw, and knew he had to explore it all, without any flaw. As he wandered the kingdom, he met a wise old wizard, who taught him about the sorcerer, an evil villain, a trickster. The wizard gave Jack advice, and a mission to fulfill, to defeat the sorcerer's dark magic, and restore peace with his skill. Along the way, Jack made friends, a brave knight and a fairy. Together, they fought against the sorcerer's minions. With bravery and merry, they journeyed through the kingdom, filled with surprises and wonder, and finally reached the sorcerer's lair, ready to make his power sunder. In a thrilling battle, the heroes fought the sorcerer and won. The kingdom was saved, and peace had finally begun. Jack bid farewell to his friends, and the magical kingdom too, but he knew he'd return someday, to continue the adventure anew. And so, the story ends, of the Enchanted Kingdom so bright, where magic and adventure beckon, forever out of sight. But if you're lucky enough, and believe with all your might, you might find a portal, and journey to the kingdom of light. The story has not yet ended. The real adventure has yet to come. Let's start the chapter 3, The Evil Sorcerer. Deep in the woods, in a tower high, lived an evil sorcerer, with a wicked eye. He practiced dark magic, and made curses aplenty, and terrorized the kingdom, with his spells, so plenty. The people lived in fear, of the sorcerer's power, and prayed for a hero, to come and save the hour. But no one dared to face him, for they knew he was strong, and the sorcerer's minions would not let them live for long. One day, a brave knight rode into the town, and pledged to defeat the sorcerer, and make him bow down. The people cheered, for they had found their savior, and the knight rode off to face the sorcerer's bad behavior. The sorcerer laughed, as the knight approached his tower, and cast a spell, that made his sword lose its power. But the knight was clever, and used his wit and skill, to trick the sorcerer, and land the final kill. With a flash of his sword, the knight struck the sorcerer down, and the tower shook, with a loud, thunderous sound. The sorcerer's dark magic was vanquished for good, and the kingdom was free from the evil sorcerer's hood. The people rejoiced, and celebrated the hero's name, and the knight rode off, with his head held high in fame. The evil sorcerer was gone, never to return, and the kingdom was saved, thanks to the hero's stern. Chapter 4, The Wise Wizard. In a land of magic and myth, lived a wise wizard, both kind and swift. He had a long beard, and a staff so grand, and his magic was legendary, all over the land. The people came to him, seeking his advice, for he was a wise wizard, with a heart so nice. He listened to their woes, and offered them aid, with his magical potions, and words that never fade. The wizard knew the secrets of the enchanted land, and could see into the future with his magic wand. He taught the people the ways of magic and spell, and showed them the path that would lead them well. One day, a brave hero came to the wizard's door, seeking his guidance to fight an evil sorcerer. The wizard saw his courage, and offered his hand to guide the hero through the enchanted land. He gave him a potion and a powerful spell, and told him to use them with wisdom and well. The hero thanked the wizard, and set off on his quest to defeat the sorcerer, and put his power to rest. The wizard watched him go, with a twinkle in his eye, and knew he'd succeed, with his heart so high. For he was a wise wizard, with a heart so true, and his magic would always guide the hero. And so, the story ends, of the wise wizard so grand, whose magic and wisdom will always be at hand. For in the enchanted land, where magic never fades, the wise wizard's legacy will always remain unscathed. Chapter 5, The Mischievous Fairy. Another chapter, another story. Stay connected to hear more adventures and fictional stories. Let's start. In a forest so green, and a meadow so bright, lived a mischievous fairy, with wings so light. She loved to play pranks on the creatures she met, and often left them puzzled. With a gleeful giggle, she bet she would hide their things, and lead them astray. With a wave of her wand, and a flick of her fay, the animals laughed at her silly tricks, but sometimes they got annoyed with her fairy mix. One day, the fairy met a wise old owl, who scolded her antics with a stern, somber howl. Your tricks may be funny, but they can hurt and cause others pain. That's not what fairies deserve. The fairy felt bad, and hung her head low, for she knew that the owl was right in his show. She promised to be kinder, and less of a prankster, and help others out when they need her answer. From then on, the fairy spread joy and light with her magical wand, and her heart so bright. She helped the animals with their problems and woes, and became a true friend to all that she knows. And so, the story ends, of the mischievous fairy so wild, who learned the importance of being kind and mild. For in the end, it's the goodness we share that makes the world a better place, and shows we care. Chapter 6, The Brave Knight. In a castle so grand, and a kingdom so bright, lived a brave knight, with his armor so tight. He rode on his horse, with his sword by his side, and his shield so strong, that nothing could hide. He protected the kingdom from dragons and beasts, with his heart so valiant, and his courage so fierce. He fought for justice, and for what was right, and never gave up, without a good fight. One day, a fierce dragon attacked the land, and spread destruction. With its fiery brand, the knight rode out, with his army so true, to face the dragon, and put an end to its coup. The battle was long, and the dragon was fierce, but the knight was determined, and never showed any fear. With his sword in his hand, and his shield held high, he fought with all his might, until the dragon did die. The kingdom rejoiced at the brave knight's win, and praised his valor. With a jubilant din, they cheered his name, and called him a hero, for he had saved them all from the dragon's zero. And so, the story ends, of the brave knight so bold, whose bravery and courage will forever be told. For in the kingdom, where peace now resides, the brave knight's legacy will always abide. Chapter 7, The Sorcerer's Minions. In a castle so dark, in a land so grim, lived a sorcerer, with minions so grim, they did his bidding, with a heart so cold, and followed his orders, with loyalty so bold. The sorcerer was evil, and sought great power, he needed his minions, every hour and every hour. They collected ingredients, for his magic spells, and followed his orders, without any shells. One day, the sorcerer had an evil plan, to take over the kingdom, and rule with his hand. He sent his minions out, to do his dirty deed, and the kingdom was left, with a terrible need. The people were scared, and didn't know what to do, for the sorcerer's minions were many and true. But then, a hero emerged, with a heart so brave, who was determined to stop the sorcerer's rave. The hero fought bravely against the sorcerer's minions, with a sword in his hand, and a heart full of opinions. He defeated them all, with his courage so true, and the sorcerer's plan was left in a rue. The kingdom rejoiced at the hero's win, and praised his bravery with a jubilant din. The sorcerer was captured, and justice was done, and the kingdom was left with a newfound Sunday. And so, the story ends, of the sorcerer's minions so vile, whose loyalty and obedience was met with a trial. For in the end, it's the heroes we hail, whose bravery and courage never do fail. Chapter 8, The Enchanted Forest. In a land far away, where the sun shone bright, lived an enchanted forest, with a magical sight. The trees were tall, and the leaves so green, and the creatures that lived there could never be seen. The forest was enchanted, with a magic so true, that it sparkled with wonder. In the morning dew, the flowers were blooming, with a fragrance so sweet, and the birds sang their songs, with a melodious beat. But deep in the forest, there was a secret so rare, a treasure so precious, that no one could compare. It was a golden fountain, with water so pure, and the one who drank from it would forever endure. The fountain was guarded by a fairy so bright, with wings like a butterfly, and a heart full of light. She watched over the forest with a keen eye, and made sure that everything was always just right. One day, a young girl lost her way in the wood, and stumbled upon the fountain where she stood. She drank from its water, and suddenly she knew that her heart was now pure, and her dreams would come true. She thanked the fairy for showing her the way, and promised to cherish this magical day. The fairy smiled, and said with a wink, "Spread the magic of the forest wherever you think." And so, the story ends, of the enchanted forest so true, whose magic and wonder is a treasure so new. For in this land far away, where the sun always shines, the enchanted forest will forever entwine. Chapter 9, The Sorcerer's Lair. In a castle so dark, with a tower so high, lived a sorcerer, with a gleam in his eye. He practiced his magic in his lair so grim, and plotted his plans with a cunning within. The castle was haunted by the sorcerer's spell, and no one dared to enter, for they knew too well that the sorcerer was evil, with a heart so cold, and his lair was a place of secrets untold. The walls were adorned with potions and spells, and the air was thick with the stench of his spells. The sorcerer was feared by all who knew that his power was great and his magic was true. But one day, a hero, with a heart full of light, entered the castle and put up a fight. He faced the sorcerer with a sword in his hand, and challenged his magic with a will so grand. The sorcerer was surprised by the hero's might, and his magic failed in the hero's sight. The hero defeated him with a strength so bold, and the sorcerer's lair was left in a cold. The castle was cleansed of the sorcerer's spell, and the hero was hailed as the one who befell. The sorcerer was banished, and his lair destroyed. and the people were left with a newfound joy, and so the story ends, of the sorcerer's lair so dark, whose power and magic left a terrible mark. For in the end, it's the hero who wins, whose courage and bravery never do thin. Chapter 10, The Final Battle. The battle lines were drawn, between good and bad, the warriors stood ready, with weapons at hand. The air was thick, with a sense of fear, for the final battle was drawing near. The forces of evil were led by their king, whose heart was black, with a poisonous sting. He had gathered his army, with a plan so grand, to conquer the land, and rule with a heavy hand. The forces of good were led by their queen, whose heart was pure, and her will so keen. She had trained her army, with a purpose so true, to fight for their freedom, and what was due? The battle began, with a clash so loud, the warriors fought bravely, as the crowd watched in awe. As the two sides clashed, and the sound of swords, and shields, and axes, clashed, the king of evil fought with a power so strong, that he pushed back the good, with his army so long. But the queen of good refused to back down, and rallied her troops, to fight with a frown. The battle raged on, with no end in sight, as the warriors fought, with all their might. The ground shook, with the force of the fight, as the battle raged, with all its might. But in the end, it was the forces of good who emerged victorious. As they stood, the king of evil was defeated at last, and his army was scattered, like leaves in a blast. And so, the story ends, of the final battle so grand, where good triumphed over evil's hand. For in the end, it's the spirit of will that wins the day, and gives us the thrill. Chapter 11, The Aftermath. The battle was over, and the dust had settled down. The warriors lay scattered on the blood-stained ground. The cries of the wounded filled the air with pain, and the silence of the dead was a haunting refrain. The land was ravaged by the war's cruel hand. The buildings were destroyed, and the crops were unplanned. The people were shattered by the loss they had borne, and the scars of the battle would forever be worn. But amidst the ruins, a glimmer of hope, for the people had survived, and they refused to mope. They came together to rebuild their land, with a strength so true, and a will so grand. The wounded were tended by the healer's care, and the dead were honored with a solemn prayer. The children were sheltered by the elders' guide, and the people were united by a sense of pride. The land was restored with hard work and sweat. The buildings were rebuilt with love and respect. The crops were planted with a hope so high, and the people were determined to reach for the sky. For though the battle was over, its aftermath remained, and the people knew that they could not be restrained, for they had shown that they were strong and brave, and that they could overcome any obstacle they'd face. And so, the story ends, of the aftermath of the war, where the people rose up, and went even farther, for in the end, it's the human spirit that prevails, and gives us the strength to rise up from our fails. Finally, the Enchanted Kingdom story has ended. Hope you loved the story. Thank you so much for your patience. Stay connected to hear more entertaining and fictional stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video.